Hi there. Okay, so today I'm going to do another review from the horror genre, which you know is my favourite, and it's going to be on Dead Space. That didn't quite work. Though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Dead Space is a survival horror third-person shooter, and it was developed by Visceral Games and published by EA Games. Challenge everything. It's set in the 25th century, and you play a silent engineer on board the USG Ishimura, which is a planet cracker ship. Pretty much does what it says on the tin. I would go into what it does, but you know. And you come into contact with this alien life form called necromorphs, which you must battle throughout the game. I think Dead Space is a really good example of how to take kind of a well-worn genre or theme and just reworking it until it feels like something that you've never played before or never seen before, and that's not really a bad thing. I mean, if we look at Uncharted, it's kind of like a mix of Indiana Jones with Tomb Raider, and it works brilliantly. So yeah, Dead Space, great story. It works well. I kind of like it, but I wouldn't say it's anything that's had me going, wow, that's really different. I did have one problem with the story, and I guess it's leaning more towards character design really than anything else. But did it bother anybody that Isaac Clarke was practically mute? Hi, Mr. Clarke. How did it feel to dismember an alien life form that just wanted to rip your head off and drink the blood through the brainstem? Okay, that was a pretty hardcore question. So, how did it feel to realise that your fiancée was alive after you thought she was dead all that time? I mean, come on. When the only word that comes out of your character's mouth is a dying scream or some kind of Darth Vader-ish laboured breathing thing, that's pretty bogus. You're in space, hacking through necromorphs, not to mention everyone is talking to you, and you alone. You must have something to say. The gameplay, my only fault would be the maps were sometimes, for me, just a little bit awkward. They'd kind of spin in strange angles, but not a huge deal. In general, though, the gameplay is pretty darn perfect. And for those of you who used to pretend to, you know, run around the halls, stalking aliens in a spacecraft, or alien, as was in my case. Get away from her, you... It's fun with the dismemberment. It's fast-paced, barring the really long introductory sequence. It's easy to get to grips with, and it's as scary as hell, which a horror game should be. Any game with dismemberment in the title is gonna be pretty cool, and trust me, this does not disappoint. You do get to dismember things. A lot. Which, for me, was really cool to play. The levels and missions provide a lot of space-related variety, so you don't get too bored with the same kind of things, although dismemberment isn't really boring. It does provide you with a lot of other things to do. For example, in some places you have to enter gravity-free zones or oxygen-free zones, which provide, in a sense, kind of like a mini-game, you know, in the game itself, which is really quite fun, and like I said, it just makes you feel like you have a lot to do. The weapon upgrade system is kind of easy to use, simple to get to grips with. You do it via the workbench. Occasionally you have kind of the challenge in finding nodes to power these or buy the stuff from the workbench. And also sometimes you have to prioritise what you want to use your nodes for. Sometimes you have no choice, but would you rather go into a room and get ammo and all this other cool stuff, or would you like to use it on upgrades? But those are all challenges that work for the game and should be there. It's all the things that a game needs to be. It's fun to play, it's easy to get to grips with, but not too easy so that it gets boring. And for sci-fi fiends out there, it's just perfection. The graphics were good, but I found myself really not paying too much attention to them, and that's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. It just shows you that I was so engrossed in what I was doing, and petrified that another alien was going to just jump out from somewhere and mug me, that I wasn't really paying too much attention about how the walls looked nice, and oh, isn't that a really gleaming asteroid? You know, I wasn't bothered about that. I mean, the graphics do a really good thing in creating kind of the eerie, dark atmosphere, and they were good. They weren't clunky or out of place. They looked great, but like I said, I wasn't paying too much attention to them, but they were perfectly adequate. soundtrack is really good at shredding those nerves when you're running down the halls, but I really think the true genius here is in the sound effects. They're just brilliant, and they work so well at creating a very physical environment that just really freaks you out before the action even begins, really. You know, you'll be walking down a hall and you'll hear these sort of random clanging in the pipes, any kind of the whirring of the vents and really hollow sounds, and they work at really, really scaring you and kind of working you up. So usually I would go into the soundtrack tracks themselves and what they do for the game, but really they're just kind of there to add a movie-esque quality to the game. They use a Type A orchestra with Type A scary instruments, like you'll be running down a hall and get sudden violinage, Psycho style. They both work together to create a really scary atmosphere. So the soundtrack is good, but I really think the sounds of the Ishimura make Dead Space what it is. And that's creepy. Overall, I'm going to rate this game highly, even though it kind of feels like Doom 3 Reincarnate to me, but it really works in just creating that scary as hell atmosphere, which I haven't seen in a really long time. It also plays beautifully, it caters to all those sci-fi fans out there like me, and the soundtrack just works incredibly well, amongst other things, to create this really creepy, scary atmosphere. And we've been missing the horror game. It's not what I would class as a survival horror, because it relies too much on action and dismemberment, as I've mentioned before. Even though the protagonist is strangely silent, it's not really going to knock my score. I would say play it in the dark with surround sound, and it's a 9.5/10. Play it in broad daylight, it's about a 9.
How I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when the nothing shines upon, then you show your little light. Twinkle, twinkle all the night. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your little spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle.
So, Mr. Isaac. Ugh, ig, ugh. If someone wants to come in, the door, I'm right behind the door. To do with, oh, that's not even making any sense whatsoever. I feel like a fake bird.